All right, and an odd twist of fate, no time for coffee, which is something you'll rarely hear me say. And then dog is being extra pitiful. Hey, fetch. All right, that's not happening. Continuing with Galatians, um, I'm going to do the reading here. This is Galatians 1, starting in verse 11. All right, it says, "For I would have you know, brothers, that the gospel that was preached by me is not man's gospel." Now, it's back to the very first part of chapter 1 where he says his apostleship was not of man. Okay? So the message he has is not of man as well. Very important to keep that in mind. For I did not receive it from any man, nor was I taught it, but I received it through a revelation of Jesus Christ. For you have heard of my former life in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God violently and tried to destroy it. And I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my own age among my. I'm sorry, let me restart that. And I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my own age among my people. So extremely zealous was I for the traditions of my fathers. But when he who had set me apart before I was born, and who called me by his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son to me, in order that I might preach him among the Gentiles, I did not immediately consult with anyone, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me, but I went away to Arabia and returned to Damascus, again to Damascus. Then, after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to visit Cephas and remained with him 15 days. But I saw none of the other apostles except James, the Lord's brother. In what I am writing to you before God, I do not lie. What is going on over there? Okay. Then I went into the regions of Syria and Cilicia, and I was still unknown in person to the churches of Judea that are in Christ. They only were hearing it said, "He who used to persecute us is now preaching the faith he once tried to destroy, and they glorify God because of me." When you read about Ananias and his fear in going to Paul, you kind of get the impression that it's possible that the Christians understood that the persecution was coming, and that the persecutions were doing what they were intended to do, which was to intimidate, shut down, silence, and remove the church. Now, had it not been that the gospel is of God, that would have been effective, because that's normally what happens. But instead, it actually had the opposite effect. You ended up with growth. Paul being a very good example of this, okay? So God took this. Now, this is a very common biblical pattern. God took the thing that was intended for evil and actually used it for good. Furthermore, what Paul really wants to get across here is that the gospel is not of human origin, and therefore it's evidence that it's of divine origin, the one true divine God, okay? And because it's of divine origin, how do we see that manifested in the world? Because after all, Paul said he wasn't taught it. It was provided to him through a revelation. The physical evidence for this is the fact that he was nowhere near the apostles, right? So when he met with the apostles, he met as an equal apostle, not just in status. Oh, I'm an apostle too. It wasn't just in status. It's that the things that measured up to being an apostle, the tools and gifts that God would give for one to accomplish the goals of an apostle were present in the apostle Paul, even though he was not around any other human apostles. So it demonstrated forensically that he was not taught by any man a tradition like he was before in Judaism. Okay? This is significant. And for Paul, this is a very powerful testimony to the Galatians that says, whatever these Judaizers told you, you can bank on the fact, and I'm giving you a little preview here of what's coming. You can bank that there's a motive behind this supposed quote unquote gospel that they're preaching. And the motive will be to get something out of you. And that's further evidence. Paul says, but what did I want out of you? What did I gain? And so it just shows the love of God and what he was doing in the world at this time. But it gets even better when we get into chapter 2. I can't wait.